Welcome everyone to a National Apprenticeship Week, and this is the last week of the talks for this year, and we are joined by Laura from Siemens Gamesa, what's looking at renewable energy. As before, if you've not joined us, we will have a talk from Laura, and then at the end be able to ask any questions. Please use the live Q&A chat, what's moderated, and we'll get to your questions at the end of the talk. And I'll hand straight over to Laura.
Hi guys, it's really weird not knowing how many of you are out there. So a bit about me and my engineering sort of qualifications. So I'm dual trained engineer. I did a level 3 NVQ diploma in engineering maintenance, which covered electrical, mechanical and some electronic units, and I did that whilst working. So it's a City and Guilds apprenticeship, and then once I completed that took 3.5 years. My company paid for me to do a HNC in electrical and electronic engineering, so that was another 2 years, and so then I'm as qualified sort of in paperwork as I'm going to be, unless I want to extend that HNC to a HND, but I'm high enough to get where I need to be at the minute, and I currently work for SGRE as a troubleshooter on an offshore wind farm. So I got there in quite a convoluted way. So I was at school like you guys, had to do my sort of where you pick your subjects and things, and I come from quite a big family, and none of us had been to university. I had the grades to go to university. And at the time when I was at school, there was a push that if you had the grades, you went to university. You didn't do a vocational course. If you had the grades, you went to uni. So I did go to university. I went to college, I did my A-levels, and I went to university, and I was told to do something I loved. So I did art, which doesn't pay that well. So I did a degree in fine art, which means basically you get a studio space and only 2 hours of lectures a week. So it's a bit of a free-for-all. You can do as much or as little as you like. And to be fair, I did do quite a lot. There were some really good workshops there. There was a metal workshop, a wood workshop, a resin workshop. So actually I spent quite a lot of time in there building things. And when I finished, I did the whole thing where, yeah, I want to travel for a few years. So I did that. I travelled for 2 years. I ended up working in New Zealand for a year. And the guy I was living with at the time, he was actually doing an apprenticeship in building. And it sounded awesome. I was working in a bar at the time. And I was like, that's what I want to do. This sounds great. Like, you've got, yeah, what I want. So I looked into doing it out there, and I couldn't on my visa. So at that point, I came back to England and I started applying for apprenticeships, and it was right in the middle of the 2008 recession, and it took me a year. I kept applying. Anyway, eventually my sister's boyfriend at the time told me about an engineering apprenticeship that they were doing at Harwich Port, where I live. Now, it sounded right up my alley. I'd already been for various interviews. I did one with a plumbing company, and I got to the interview for the apprenticeship, and it was an old guy who owned the company, and he kept trying to talk me into not doing the apprenticeship, but I could go and be their receptionist. And I'm so glad I said no, because at the time I was actually quite down, because I was working in a health spa and I didn't have a very high self-esteem. Like, I was thinking, what am I doing here? I'm not getting anywhere. Anyway, this engineering apprenticeship came up. And I remember going away and I had to Google what engineering was, because I didn't actually know. And it encompasses so much, but no one had ever told me what engineering was. Anyway, I thought it sounded great. I applied, went through the whole screening process, and yeah, so I ended up going back to college and doing my NVQ alongside working. So I had 1 day a week at college and then worked the rest of the week. And then so the apprenticeship, like I said, was at Harwich Port, and that's in collaboration with Felixstowe Port. They're owned by the same people. So once I qualified, I worked there for 4 years on heavy plant machinery. And then once the job came up for offshore wind, it actually, that we sail out of the town I live in and the shifts were better. So I went to offshore wind. So as you can see, there's a lot of arrows on there. And what I was trying to illustrate is there's not necessarily a direct route to doing that. But if I knew what I knew what I know now, I think I'd have jumped the whole university stage, because I'm still paying off my student loan. And when I went, because I was from a low income family and stuff, I got grants and things. And I think the tuition fees were a third of the price of what they are now. And I am still paying that off. I actually finish in May. And I know when I then got qualified in engineering, I was working with guys that were 6 years younger than me, that were already had like a 4-bedroom house and a nice car. And I was like scraping together to buy a house. And I know that's not the be all and end all, but I do think it's important. Like, you want a certain quality of life. And I haven't really ever used that art degree, although it was a great fun time. It was a very expensive time. So I spoke a bit about how I got the apprenticeship. I applied directly to companies, and I don't know if that's exactly how it still works now, because I think colleges can put you in touch with companies, but I definitely found it easier to go directly to a company. So identify the sort of company you want to work for, and there's a lot of information on their careers pages. So usually if you go to the careers page, you can find something. So like I said, I got told about this by my sister's boyfriend. And so first of all, I had to have a group interview, and we had all these tests about sort of spatial awareness and problem solving with really quick time frames. And I think they did 3 groups of 20 doing that. And once you got through that, then I had to do a height test, because I'd be working at height. And then I had a 1-to-1 interview. And then once I'd got through that, I just had to pass a medical. So that's how I got on. And they're the cranes I used to work on at the port in the picture there. So the apprenticeship itself, like I said, the first year I actually worked in the apprenticeship workshop for 4 days of the week. It was Monday to Friday, and one day I got day release to go to college. Now, on those 4 other days that I was at the workshop, we would do things. So we weren't working directly with other engineers. It was still a teaching environment, but we'd be overhauling like compressors or fifth wheels or things like that, like frames, doing motor testing, things like that, that the other workshops were throwing out to us as things. We'd have to write up all these jobs, and they'd be spec'd up later so you could use them to get the qualification. So I ended up with about 5 logbooks. You can see all the jobs there. After that first year, we were then put on shift. So we worked directly with the qualified engineers. And again, it was just a matter of writing up every job we were doing, so we could then pull out the parts we needed to spec them to meet the modules in the apprenticeship. So you can see there what some of the modules are. I think there was loads in there, lots of, and they all covered different things. So there's the fault diagnosis on electrical equipment, and there's quite a few of the electronic ones, but there were also like mechanical ones as well. I don't know if you can see that in the other picture. So it was a big job at the end, sort of going through and speccing up all the jobs. But basically, you'd already done the hard work by writing up the jobs. Now, what some of these jobs involved, this was actually after I qualified. I got a job at Felixstowe Port in central engineering, which is the heavy stuff. So we'd be cutting out lots of cutting and burning, cutting out a hydraulic ram there, lots of slinging and doing your lift plans and stuff. Trying to figure out, you know, your lifting points and things like that. That's taking out a gearbox from the top of a crane. That was a big job, because you have to align the motors within like really fine tolerances with a DTI and things like that. You can see a really good picture. But burning out bogey pins, we were jacking up the top of the cranes off the rails so we could realign the rails. It was really interesting work. But after 4 years of doing that, once I'd qualified, the offshore job came up where I lived. So I was driving 45 minutes a day to go to the job at the port. And also they were trying to change our shift pattern and it didn't really work for me. So I went and applied for Siemens Gamesa. So it's a global company and it has different divisions, but I'm in the offshore service and maintenance division. It's a really big company and they're all over the world. So in theory, I could go with them and work in Taiwan, is their newest wind farm. Like I say, we sail out of Harwich, and that's actually not one of our turbines. We're on the same field. That's a 3.6 megawatt one. We actually work on 6 megawatt direct drives. So my job there, I needed so we've spoken before about my qualifications. And I had a HNC, which I don't think I did need for this. I only needed an apprenticeship and NVQ, but it certainly helped having the HNC. So first of all, I went in at a service technician level, and that's the most basic level you can be. And you basically just go on to the turbines. You've got your basic GWOs, which mean you can go on a turbine. Without those basic qualifications that you have to go away and do company based, you can't, you couldn't be a random person off the street and go on a turbine. You need those GWOs. So once you've got them, you're basically a grease monkey. You're cleaning things, you're wiping things up, you're fixing basic things. And then I quickly turned into a team leader. So I could lead the team and do the paperwork, and then again quickly went up to troubleshooter. So not only was I just doing the servicing and things, if a turbine broke down, I would be sent out to fix it. Now, if you go in, I'm going to throw some money out there because I think you do need to know that. I think it's something you should know when you're applying for jobs. You know, yeah, you want to do something you enjoy, but you want to know it'll pay the bills and give you a certain quality of life. So the service technician basic pay is about 32.5 without overtime. Then once you're an MT, which is a team leader, but just on servicing, that goes up to 38.5. And now as a troubleshooter, I'm on 47 and a bit. So that's a decent amount of money, and that's before overtime, which you always hit in summer because of the shift pattern. So a day in the life of me at the minute, I get to work at 6:15 and I go and collect my paperwork packs because I'm in charge of all the paperwork. We work under AWPs, which is approved written procedures. So I basically have to sign to say each time I put in an isolation and that I'm giving personal supervision. If there's a ROM pin or something, that's all on me. And if I break any of them, it's like a written contract. If I do something wrong, then I will be held accountable and lose my authorization. So once I've picked up all that pack, I've got my team together, checked we're all on the boat. We get on the boat, I check all my equipment has been picked for the day, my tools, my parts for the jobs I've been assigned. And then we sail. And the sail from Harwich, depending on where we are in the field, is about 1.5 hours to 1 hour and 45 minutes. That's the boat we sail on. It's a Sea Cat, and basically it drives up to the bottom of the turbine. It's got a rubber front on the boat and it pushes against the ladder you can see in the middle picture. Now that rubber sort of sticks to the bars on either side of the ladder, so you can step across, clip on and step across and climb up. Now we can only transfer in maximum wave heights of 1.8 meters, because above that the boat won't stick on and there's too much movement on the ladder. Once we're on, we have to crane all our equipment off of the boat onto the bottom of the turbine, which is the TP, which you can see in the top right there. And then once we've got it all on the TP, we then have to take it up to the top of the turbine. So there's another sort of DMAG crane at the top that we will winch all our equipment up to the top with. So it's at this point we're on the TP that I have to physically ring the control center and take control and switch a switch from local or from remote to local. So anyone on shore, once I'm on there, cannot do anything to that turbine that I won't allow, because it's a safety thing, isn't it? So Once I've taken control and we've craned everything up to the top, that's when technically our working day starts, and that can include pretty much anything. So there's a motor I've changed with the coupling. This other picture on the right is the rotating union, and that's sort of, I think, the most important part of the turbine, because it allows the bit on the front to go round and round without twisting up all your wires, because basically it's a really clever bit of kit, because you think that front's always turning but the back stays static. So all your electrical connections, all your hydraulic connections have all got to be able to have that movable part. So we could be working on that. That's doing some electrical testing, resistance testing on a motor. That's looking down into the hub on the front of the turbine, past the hydraulic station and stuff. It's actually a really big space on the 6 meg turbines. They're 2 floors up there. They're bigger than my house, but they're just full of equipment. It can be quite a difficult environment to work in. Obviously, you've got the weather outside. The transfer can be really rough, like on the boat. We have a lot of instances of seasickness. Touch wood, I've never been sick, but also the turbines, because they're direct drive, the generators in them, the area where we work in, it gets so hot. I mean, that's a picture of the thermometer last year where it got to 40 degrees just in the nacelle. It wasn't even in the generator. The hottest generator I've been in is almost 90 degrees, and it physically burnt my friend's arm. He leant on the back of a nut and it burnt the lines into it. It shouldn't have been that hot at all. Basically, when the day ends, we sort of gather up all our stuff and do the reverse, and I have to hand control back, and then we sail back and we have to demob. We also do some of the working days, we have to do sort of emergency rescue procedures, and that's what that picture is on the right, because when you're out that far at sea, we are our own emergency service. There's no one coming out to help you. Because we're a business, a Coast Guard, you'd be so far down the list of priorities, because it's deemed that we should be capable, that you might not be being rescued by anyone more official. So we're on the turbine, all of us are advanced rescue trained, and that's what we're practicing there, in advanced rescue with a 6-to-1 pulley and stuff. And we're also advanced first aid trained, which means we can administer oxygen and penthrox, and it's a more in-depth course. It's really something else, but hopefully nothing like that will ever happen. Part of our basic course is to actually go out there as well. We have to do a sea survival course in a pool about evacuating from height in sort of a life jacket and stuff. And they put a wave machine in on this pool, and they turn off all the lights and there's strobe lights, and you have to swim in formation once you're all in the water and stay together, and flip over like an emergency raft off a boat, and then climb in and stuff like that. So they do take safety quite seriously, but like I say, hopefully nothing like that would ever really happen. So I did my apprenticeship with the port, and it was a really good apprenticeship, but I know that Siemens also do apprenticeships, and I work with quite a few people that have been through the Siemens apprenticeship. So they're advertised in January, so they might even still be out now. And actually, weirdly enough, I haven't got the link, but if you look, I don't know where you're all based, but Harwich and Felixstowe Port have just been advertising for their apprenticeships as well. But the Siemens ones are advertised about now, ready for September, and you can apply at 16. You can't go offshore until you're a bit older, but the first year of the Siemens apprenticeship, you're completely in college full time. And I think that's somewhere up north, in Newcastle or somewhere. And there's a 2-stage interview. And then basically after that first year, you'll be sent to site, and you will be working like on the turbines with the same shift pattern as we are. The money's a bit different. I mean, the starting wage is not great, but you get a food allowance that brings you up. I mean, that's still more than what I was on, like before I went on an apprenticeship. But, you know, by the 4th year, I mean, I worked with people as apprentices that were earning over 30 grand a year as an apprentice. It's not even fully qualified. So it's mad, really, what you can do if you really want to put in the work. So just to round up, basically, I would definitely recommend an apprenticeship. If I had my time again, that's what I'd have done from the off. And I know there's different types of apprenticeships, but if you're someone who likes working with your hands, and which I did, and I got that confused with, oh, well, I should do art. There are other options to be like physical in your job. And for me as well, working in a team out there where you really have got to rely on each other if something goes wrong, you've just got this better relationship with the people you work with, because you've got to trust them. It's not as, I don't think, you know, there's none of that office politics. When it comes down to it, you've got to have each other's back. And that's what I like about my job. That's what I like about having done an apprenticeship. And that's basically all I've got to say. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much for that, Laura. Yes, we've got plenty of questions coming through.
That's good.
Okay, so the first one is, are you a member of a professional body?
Oh, I used to be at Felixstowe. I was a part of the mechanical engineers thing, but I didn't keep up my membership.
Okay. Would you like to work abroad?
Yeah, I would not be adverse to working abroad. I've actually been sent abroad a couple of times by my company to Austria and Germany.
Fantastic. So I think you've kind of answered this, but is it very practical? Do you spend a lot of time at a computer?
No, definitely not. There is paperwork, and I have an iPad I have to take to work to fill in that paperwork, but my job is predominantly hands-on. I couldn't sit in an office all day. It would drive me nuts. Sorry.
Okay. We've got so many. Oh, hold on. What's the best part of your job?
It's probably the people, to be fair. We have a good laugh, and I know you have to be a bit careful with banter and stuff, but it comes down to knowing each other's limits, and we just have fun out. You know, when you're out there, it's just nice work. You're doing a hard physical job, and you sort of bring each other up. So that's probably the best part.
Okay. So someone's asked about, are there any work experience opportunities for years 10 and 11 at Siemens?
Oh, you definitely wouldn't be allowed offshore, and I know that's a shame, but there would be, I think they'd definitely you'd be able to go into the office and see like the workings of like what the planners do and how they assign us jobs, and how the stores mobilize our stuff. And I think they have had that before. Definitely we've had a girl in the office on work experience, but like I say, without those GWOs and stuff, and I think even at 16, the insurance purposes, you can't go offshore. But I tell you what, so RWE own our site, so that's the other one you should look at, RWE Careers. They do apprenticeships as well, and they have, when we go round and I do joint STEM events with them, they've actually got a VR headset, and they've filmed like the route round from getting from the bottom of the turbine up, and you put on the VR headset, and that's probably the closest you'll get as a 15 to 16-year-old to looking round a turbine. It's really trippy. You transfer off the boat in it, and you go up to the top and look round the nacelle. It's really good.
That's great, thank you. I'm just putting that link in for the RWE website.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact, but definitely worth looking at. And again, just go to the careers page on it.
Okay. So let me see. Oh, do you have to be fit to do the job?
Yeah, and you will, yeah. I mean, most of the people I work with have quite physical sort of hobbies as well. I myself do a lot of climbing, kayaking, I do triathlons, but a lot of the guys do various things like kite surfing, and like you do have to be fit because there are lifts in those turbines, but when things go wrong, you're climbing that, and that's 110 meters on a ladder. And the closer you get to the top, it's hot, and you're moving around in all your, so the PPE, it's, so the harness and everything that we're meant to wear is 16 kilograms. So you're lugging that around with you whilst you're climbing and things. So you do have to have a certain level of fitness, yes.
Wow. So yeah, definitely for people that like active, to be active, definitely. Okay. I
will say though, obviously when I worked at the port, we didn't have a lot of mechanical aids. Like, it was a lot of heavy stuff. So we'd use flogging hammers and 8-pound sledgehammers to do up like nuts and things. But I have to say, from working with Siemens, all our tools are like hydraulic torque tools now. So actually, although it's heavy to put on, like, you're not swinging a sledgehammer or anything. It's a lot easier than previous jobs I've had in the industry. Do you know what I mean?
Fantastic. Okay. Go on. Did you get to meet lots of other apprenticeships during your training?
You mean people on different apprenticeships, or?
I don't know. I guess either other apprenticeships with yourself or other.
So the apprenticeship I did, there were six of us in total in the year group. There were 4 from Felixstowe, 2 from Harwich. There's 2 in each year, so we've got 6 at the wind farm at the minute, but 2 in each year for the 3 years. They're like working their way through. When I was at college, we were obviously in classes with people doing different apprenticeships, so I did meet different people doing different apprenticeships there. Yeah.
Okay, so, fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's all right. Go on.
Right. Oh, I think we've got time for a couple more. Oh, if you didn't do this job, what would you do?
I actually don't know. It would have to. It would be in engineering somewhere. Do you know what? I'd quite like to work on the train line. I wouldn't mind doing maintenance on some of the train lines. And
fantastic. I don't know if we
engineering. Yeah.
I think we nearly lost you there, Laura, but you're back, I think. Okay. What was harder, university or your apprenticeship?
They were in different ways. I think as well, it depends on the course you do at university. Like I said, I don't want to say my university course was a joke, but I had 2 hours of lectures a week, so it wasn't, and I did have to do a dissertation and everything, and it was self-led, so I guess some people struggled with that. But I would say, I mean, for the apprenticeship, I had to do things at college like further maths and stuff, which I quite liked. And I guess that's more challenging than, conceptual thinking. So, but yeah, I mean, both are doable. Both are definitely doable. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've got, one more question. I think we've got time for one more. Does your company recognise the Eng status? Well, is that chartered engineering, is it? I don't know.
I don't know really I don't really know what that is, so I can't really answer that question, I'm afraid. What status?
I don't know. It's someone's asked about the Eng status. I don't know what that is either. So.
Sorry, I don't know. Like I said, I think the basic requirements when I applied for the job was to have an engineering apprenticeship or some sort of like engineering background. And depending on what level you want to go to in Siemens, depends on sort of yeah, how far you want to push it, because obviously there's people that just do your level 4 servicing that will be changing grease cups and doing repetitive work. But then if you want to be a troubleshooter, you need to go a bit further, you know.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's come to the end of our talk and Q&A session today. But thank you, Laura. That was really interesting, really informative, and we hope all our schools have really enjoyed it. And thank you all for joining us.
Great. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for having me.